Hello and welcome back, artists and designers. Today we're going to go ahead and start our robot build challenge. So the idea here is that you all are going to make a robot with your basic Illustrator skills at this point using simple shapes. So we're going to be able to create these robots with the things that we already know and build on this a little bit as we go. Our requirements are here, so I'm going to work on this video assuming that you already have your sketch. That is a super important step. If you don't have your sketch to upload, you're just going to be winging it. It's going to be hard to create something that looks good, so start with that basic pencil sketch to get you going. And we're going to go ahead and dive in and make this. So I'm going to hop over to Illustrator at this point. Here's essentially my completed robot, but let's go ahead and get this started. So I'm going to do a new file. I'm going to choose again my basic letter format. I'm going to go vertical for this, and then again let's make sure that we set our color mode to RGB, and we'll go ahead and hit create. So the first thing that I want to do is get my robot into this. Actually, before I even get my robot in, I'm going to go ahead over here and under the properties tab, click on rulers. You'll see these rulers kind of pop up along the side, and I'm going to go ahead over to this left hand one, click right on the ruler, and I'm going to drag out a center point for my project. And that's okay if it's not dead center, but we just want a line of symmetry here that we can use to help us create this robot. So I'm going to do that first and foremost. Alright, next up I need to get my robot sketch in here. So I'm going to go ahead up to File, and I'm going to go down to Place, and I'm going to go find that robot sketch, which is buried in here, robot number 2, let's use that. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the link option because that will allow me to save it in the project itself. And I'm just going to do the template step on my own. So I'm going to go ahead and ignore that, and I'm going to hit place. Now you remember this loads it up, and I'm going to click and drag to get it to be the size that I want. So I'm clicking and dragging to put it in here. And there we go. The robot image is now in here, and what I'm going to want to do is get this centered on that line. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and I'm going to look for a good center point. So I'm going to drag him, and it doesn't need to be perfect, but I'm going to use kind of that center line here. That looks pretty good. I want to try to get that centered on that guideline that I gave myself. So I'm going to zoom back out, and at this point I could start tracing, but it's going to be annoying if this is constantly moving, and honestly it's too dark for me. So I'm going to go ahead over here with the robot still selected. You can see the bounding box. I'm going to go ahead and drop the opacity on this to whatever is comfortable for you. So I'm going to go down personally to about 30–35%. I can still see it, but it's a little less overbearing. So at this point, I think I'm good with this layer. I'm going to go ahead. I could lock just this item, but I prefer to hit the little empty lock icon here under layers. Lock that layer off completely. I'll just go ahead and call this template because that is essentially my template layer. I'm going to go hit the plus, create a new layer, and this is where I'm going to actually build my robot. So I'm going to go ahead back to this, and I am essentially now ready to get my project started, and we're going to build with hollow shapes. So I want to make sure that I pick a stroke and no fill because I want to be able to see through this. I'll zoom in here, and I'm going to start working my way through the robot as I go. So essentially, if I want to start with the top part, I might grab the ellipse tool, and I'm going to give you a little trick here. You know that if you click and drag, your circle is going to come out from wherever you started your drag point, and I could use that to lock it in the center. But alternatively, if you go to the center where it says guide, you see the pink guide pop up, and I start dragging and I hold the Alt key or Command on a PC, that is going to keep my circle in the center point. So I can do that, and I can essentially get the circle, whether I want to hold Shift and get a perfect circle, I'm holding the Alt key down to keep it centered. So I'm just going to get that lined up in here, kind of how I want it, and then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of adjust that down, and I'm going to use that circular shape to help me get kind of what I want. The key is, again, making sure that that center point of my circle stays right on that guideline, and I think I'm good. So the trick to that is when you start a shape, you start on that center point and hold the Alt key down, and that will lock that shape into the center point. So if I were trying to do the eyes here like this, I would hold that and lock that down to that center point. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop with that video. So essentially all we did was create a new letter size document. We went ahead and added the guideline down the center by clicking on the rulers, dragging our guideline out to get the center point. Once we had that, we went ahead and did a file in place to put our robot image, dropped down the opacity, locked out the layer, and then we went ahead and started creating. So in the next video, we'll build on this, and I'll see you then.